I'm Claire, and this is the story of how Emily thought she could outsmart me, forge my signature, and disappear with our entire company. But she underestimated me. By the end of 1 week, she lost everything: her money, her freedom, and her future. Emily wasn't just my business partner, she was my college roommate at Northwestern, the sister I never had. For 6 years, I handled the creative vision while Emily managed finances and operations. Perfect partnership, or so I thought. But Emily had been harboring a secret resentment. She believed I got all the credit while she did the real work. She wanted out, but she didn't want to leave empty-handed. She wanted everything. Emily wasn't just planning to quit. She was planning to sell our entire company to a competitor for $15 million and cut me off. She forged my signature on every document and had been moving our assets offshore for months, setting up shell companies, preparing to liquidate everything while I remained completely oblivious. What Emily didn't know was that I had been watching, learning, and preparing. In exactly 7 days, her entire world would collapse. The day that tore our friendship apart started like any other. I had an early meeting with the Hendersons about staging their $8 million Gold Coast penthouse. The appointment ended quicker than expected. They loved our proposal and signed immediately. I drove back to our downtown office feeling great, already planning the design in my head. I used my key to slip in quietly, not wanting to disturb Emily if she was on a call. That's when I heard her voice drifting from the conference room. "Claire's signature on the asset transfer documents looks perfect. She'll never know what hit her." I stopped dead in my tracks. My blood turned to ice. "By Friday, we'll have $15 million and she'll have nothing," Emily continued, her voice cold and calculating. "The beauty is, I'm technically still authorized to make these moves as CFO." I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear more. Derek's voice came through the speaker. "And the offshore accounts are ready? She can't trace any of it." "Already done," Emily laughed. "I've been moving small amounts for months. Claire never checks the books. She trusts me completely." God, she's so naive. A third voice, one I didn't recognize: "The shell company documentation is airtight. Once you transfer the remaining assets, we can complete the sale to Premier Staging." They think both partners are on board. My heart hammered against my ribs. Premier Staging was our biggest competitor. They'd been trying to buy us out for years. "What about when Claire finds out?" Derek asked. "By then we'll be in the Caymans with $15 million, Emily said. "She can file all the lawsuits she wants from Chicago. Good luck collecting from a beach in Georgetown." They all laughed. I felt like I was drowning. Emily, my best friend, my business partner, the person I trusted most in the world, had been planning to destroy me for months. She'd been forging my signature, stealing our money, and preparing to disappear with everything we'd built together. My legs felt weak. I quietly backed toward the exit, my mind reeling. I needed to get out before they discovered me. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out how to stop this. But one thought echoed in my mind: Emily had no idea what she'd just started. That Monday evening, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop screen, my hands shaking as I logged into our business banking system. I'd never felt the need to check before. I trusted Emily completely. That trust was about to make me sick. The numbers didn't lie. $4. $2 million had been systematically moved out of our main accounts over the past 6 months. Small transfers, carefully spaced to avoid triggering automatic alerts. Emily had been patient, methodical, and absolutely ruthless. I pulled up the transfer authorizations, and my stomach dropped. Every single document bore my signature. Except I'd never signed any of them. I grabbed actual contracts from my desk drawer and compared the signatures side by side. Emily had practiced my handwriting perfectly. The curve of my C, the loop in my L, even the way I dotted my I's, it was flawless forgery. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily. "Working late tonight, don't wait up." Working late. Right. Probably transferring more of my money. I dug deeper into the financial records. Shell companies with names like Meridian Holdings LLC and Lakefront Capital Group, companies I'd never heard of, all registered to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. The registration dates told the real story. The first one was created 7 months ago, right after Emily started dating Derek. This wasn't some sudden desperate plan. This was a calculated, long-term theft. I found email exchanges between Emily and offshore banking consultants discussing asset protection strategies and international wealth management. The timeline was crystal clear. Emily had been planning this since Derek, her boyfriend, entered the picture. 7 months of pretending to be my best friend while systematically stealing everything I'd worked for. But the worst discovery came when I found the actual purchase agreement draft. Premier Staging wasn't just buying our client list, they were buying everything. Our proprietary staging techniques, our exclusive vendor relationships, even our office lease. Emily had negotiated to sell them the complete company infrastructure for $15 million. And according to the signature lines, I was supposedly agreeing to all of it. The final document made me physically nauseous. A resignation letter with my forged signature, stating I was voluntarily leaving the business due to personal reasons and relinquishing all claims to company assets. Emily had thought of everything. In her version of events, I would simply disappear, leaving her as the sole owner free to sell to Premier Staging. Clean, legal, and completely fraudulent. I screenshot everything, backed up files to my personal drives, and started building my evidence folder. Emily thought she was so smart, but she'd left a digital paper trail that would bury her. She had no idea that her naive business partner was about to become her worst nightmare. Tuesday morning arrived, and Emily walked into the office like nothing had changed. She hugged me good morning, asked about my weekend, even brought me my favorite coffee from the shop downstairs. The performance was flawless. "Hey, babe," she said casually, setting a stack of papers on my desk. "Just some routine quarterly filings. Need your signature when you get a chance." I glanced at the documents, my heart racing. Buried in the middle of legitimate tax forms were 3 more asset transfer authorizations. She was still moving money right under my nose, while smiling and calling me babe. "Sure thing," I said, matching her casual tone. "Let me review these after my client calls." Her smile tightened for just a second. "They're pretty time-sensitive. The accountant needs them by noon." "Of course." I smiled back. "I'll get to them soon." Throughout Tuesday and Wednesday, Emily's behavior became increasingly erratic. She'd disappear for coffee runs that lasted 2 hours. Her phone rang constantly with calls she'd take in the other room, speaking in hushed tones. When I walked in on one conversation, she'd quickly hang up and claim it was her dentist. Wednesday afternoon, Derek started showing up at the office. He'd never visited before. Emily always kept her personal and professional lives separate. Now suddenly he was bringing her lunch, staying for hours, and watching me with calculating eyes. "Claire, right?" he said, extending a manicured hand. "Emily talks about you constantly. Smart woman, building this empire together." There was something in his tone, a smugness that made my skin crawl. He knew exactly what they were planning. That evening, I pretended to leave for a dinner meeting, but circled back to watch The Office from across the street. At 8 p.m., I saw Emily and Derek through the conference room windows, papers spread across the table, laptops open, clearly working on something important. My phone buzzed. "Still at dinner?" "Derek and I are just finishing up some paperwork. See you tomorrow." More lies. My phone buzzed again. I had just received confirmation that my new company had been incorporated. Thursday morning brought the closest call yet. I was photographing documents in Emily's office when I heard her key in the front door. I had maybe 30 seconds to get back to my desk. I grabbed the papers, shoved them back in her drawer, and sprinted to my office just as she rounded the corner. "You're here early," she said, studying my face. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, trying to control my breathing. "Thought I'd get a head start on the Morrison proposal." She nodded slowly, but I caught her glancing toward her office door. Had she noticed something out of place? "Actually," Emily said, "I'm glad you're here. We need to talk about some urgent contract modifications. Derek's been helping me review our partnership agreements, and there are some liability issues we need to address immediately." "That's all right," I replied. "I need to head out for an urgent meeting. Can we talk when I'm back?" I carried my bag and left. The end game was about to start. First call. Our attorney, Patricia. Patricia, this is Claire Hartwell. Emily is trying to steal our company. I need you to freeze every account immediately. This is an emergency. Emily has been forging my signature for months, moving our money offshore, and plans to liquidate everything by Friday. I have recordings. I need emergency injunctions, asset freezes, and trademark protections filed as soon as possible. Patricia's tone shifted instantly. I'll be at the courthouse when it opens. Don't do anything until I call you. But I was just getting started. Second call. Our primary bank. Emergency fraud line. This is Claire Hartwell, co-owner of Lux Staging. My business partner has been making unauthorized transfers using forged signatures. I need immediate holds on all accounts pending legal review. By 4 p.m., I'd locked down $2.8 million across 4 different banks. Emily couldn't touch a single penny. Next, I hit the nuclear option. I filed emergency trademark applications for Lux Staging, our logo, and our proprietary staging techniques, all under my name only. Emily had been meaning to do this for years, but kept forgetting. Now I knew why. The legal paperwork was brutal, but Patricia walked me through everything over the phone. Emergency asset protection, trademark filings, and formal fraud complaints with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. But the most brilliant move came at 7 p.m. Individual service contracts. I called every major client we'd worked with, explaining that we were restructuring the business and needed them to sign new contracts directly with me for future staging services. The Hendersons, the Morrison estate, the Patterson family, everyone Emily thought was locked into Lux Staging, was now contractually bound to work with me personally. Claire, darling, Mrs. Henderson said sleepily, of course we'll sign with you directly. You're the one who makes our homes look magical. Directly handling client relationships all these years had its advantages. It meant they trusted me. By sunrise on Friday, I'd secured $2 million in confirmed future contracts, all tied to my personal staging company that I'd just incorporated, Meridian Staging LLC. Emily wanted to sell Lux Staging? Fine. She could sell an empty shell company with no money, no trademarks, and no clients. The final touch was the hardest, acting normal. Friday morning, I walked into the office like nothing had changed. I brought Emily her favorite coffee, asked about her evening, and smiled when she mentioned the big meeting we had that afternoon to finalize everything. I'm so nervous, I said, playing the part perfectly. But I trust you, Em. You've always known what's best for the business. Emily beamed, probably thinking about her $15 million payday. She had no idea that her bank accounts were frozen, her trademarks were invalid, and her clients had already jumped ship. Derek arrived at noon, designer suit and cocky smile, ready to celebrate their big score. They were about to learn that their naive little Claire had just destroyed them completely. At 2:40 p.m. Friday afternoon, Emily's world collapsed. I was pretending to review some documents when Emily's phone rang. Her face went white as she answered. What do you mean the accounts are frozen? She whispered, her voice tight with panic. Derek looked up from his laptop, confusion creeping across his face. Babe, what's wrong? Emily's hands shook as she frantically typed on her phone, checking bank after bank. Claire, she said slowly, her voice deadly quiet, did you do something to our accounts? I looked up innocently. What do you mean? Every single account is frozen. Emergency legal hold. They're saying there's suspected fraud. Derek's laptop screen reflected his growing horror as he discovered the trademark issues. Emily, the company name, the logo, none of it is valid anymore. Someone filed new trademarks yesterday. Everything's registered to Claire Hartwell individually. The silence in that conference room was deafening. Emily stared at me, and I watched years of fake friendship melt away, revealing the calculating predator underneath. You knew. Knew what, Emily? You fucking knew, she exploded, slamming her hand on the table. How long have you been planning this? Derek's phone buzzed with a text. His face went gray. The Patterson contract just canceled. They're saying they've signed with someone called Meridian Staging. That's impossible, Emily said, but her voice was breaking. Meridian Staging, I said quietly, is my new company. Turns out, our clients prefer working with me directly. Emily's mask completely shattered. You self-righteous bitch. I carried this company for 6 years while you played dress-up with dollhouses. I deserve that money. You deserve prison, I replied calmly. Derek was spiraling, making frantic phone calls. The buyers are backing out. They can't purchase a company with no assets, no trademarks, and no client contracts. That's when Emily truly lost it. 6 years of resentment came pouring out in a toxic flood. You think you're so smart, Claire? You think you built this company? I did everything. I handled the real business while you picked out pretty pillows. You were nothing but a decorating service with a fancy name. And yet, I said, standing up, somehow this decorating service just outplayed you completely. Derek slammed his phone down. My loan sharks want their money by Sunday, Emily. You promised me $15 million. Then figure it out. Emily screamed. Break into her accounts. Steal the client list. Do something. I smiled, pulling out my phone. Did you know Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings? I've been documenting everything you just said. Emily's face went white as she realized what had just happened. Game over, Emily. Monday morning, 2 FBI agents in dark suits walked into Emily's house. Special Agent Rodriguez and Agent Kim carried briefcases and badges that made Emily's coffee cup slip from her hands. Emily Roberts, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes, Agent Rodriguez announced, reading from her Miranda rights card. I watched Emily's face cycle through disbelief, panic, and finally resignation as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Derek, who'd been frantically packing papers into his briefcase, tried to bolt for the door. Agent Kim blocked his path with one outstretched arm. Derek Sullivan, you're also under arrest. Within 20 minutes, Derek was spilling everything. It was all Emily's idea, he shouted from the FBI van. She came to me with a plan. I just provided the offshore banking contacts. The betrayal was instant and complete. The man who'd convinced Emily to steal $15 million was now throwing her under the bus to save his own skin. I have recordings, I told Agent Rodriguez, handing over my phone and laptop. Emily confessed to months of forgery and detailed their entire escape plan. 3 weeks later, in federal court, the evidence was overwhelming. Digital forensics had traced every fraudulent transaction. The recorded phone calls played Emily's own voice admitting to forgery. Bank surveillance showed her making unauthorized transfers using fake identification. Derek's lawyer had cut a deal, full cooperation in exchange for reduced charges. Derek testified for 6 hours, detailing how he'd pressured Emily to steal the money, provided her with offshore banking contacts, and helped forge my signatures. Emily sat at the defendant's table, her expensive suits replaced with Orange County Jail uniforms, watching her former boyfriend destroy her defense piece by piece. The prosecutor laid out the timeline. 7 months of systematic fraud, for $0.2 million stolen, forged signatures on dozens of documents, and attempted theft of a $12 million company. The defendant, the prosecutor said, didn't just steal money. She stole trust, friendship, and 6 years of her business partner's hard work. This was not a crime of desperation. It was calculated, premeditated theft conducted by someone who believed she was too smart to get caught. Emily's lawyer could barely mount a defense. The evidence was too damning, Derek's testimony too detailed, and the recordings too clear. But before the trial, Emily and Derek made one last desperate play. Sunday night at 2:47 a.m., my office security system sent alerts to my phone. 2 figures in dark clothing were breaking into the Lux staging office, heading straight for the server room. I watched through the security cameras on my phone as Emily and Derek frantically tried to steal our computer hard drives and client files. They thought if they could destroy the digital evidence and steal the client list, they might still salvage something from their failed scheme. Derek had a crowbar, Emily had a laptop bag. They looked like desperate criminals, which I realized is exactly what they'd become. Get the client database. Emily hissed, her voice picked up clearly by our new audio surveillance system. "If we can't have the company, at least we can start fresh somewhere else." Derek was struggling with the server locks when they heard sirens. I'd called 911 the moment I saw them breaking in. Emily made it to the stairwell before Chicago PD tackled her to the ground. Derek tried to climb out a window but fell 2 stories into a dumpster, breaking his wrist and bruising his ego. The breaking and entering charges were just icing on the cake. The judge was particularly unimpressed when the prosecutor played security footage of Emily trying to steal evidence while out on bail. "This demonstrates a complete lack of remorse and ongoing criminal intent," the prosecutor noted. Derek's cooperation deal evaporated instantly. Emily's bail was revoked. Emily's fatal flaw was the same arrogance that had driven her to crime in the first place. She genuinely believed I was too stupid to understand business. The defendant consistently underestimated her victim, the prosecutor explained to the jury. She thought Claire Hartwell was just a naive decorator who would never notice sophisticated financial crimes. That arrogance led to sloppy mistakes. The digital forensics expert testified about Emily's trail of evidence. Every forged signature had been practiced on company computers. Every offshore transfer had been initiated from her work laptop. Every fraudulent document had been created using company software that tracked user activity. She didn't even try to hide her digital footprints, the expert said. She believed her victim would never look. Derek's testimony was devastating. He detailed how Emily had bragged about manipulating me, how she'd laughed about my naive trust, and how she'd been certain I'd never fight back. Emily said Claire was too soft, too stupid, and too loyal to ever realize what was happening, Derek testified. She called Claire her perfect mark, someone smart enough to build a valuable company, but too trusting to protect it. The prosecutor played recordings of Emily describing me as too scared to handle real business and too weak to fight back against her best friend. Every single crime Emily committed was premeditated and documented. Every single move I made in response was completely legal and strategically brilliant. The contrast was stark. Emily, the arrogant criminal who documented her own crimes, versus Claire, the strategic victim who turned the tables using perfectly legal business maneuvers. The defendant believed intelligence meant criminal cunning, the prosecutor concluded. She learned too late that real intelligence means understanding consequences. Judge Patricia Hawkins delivered the verdict with surgical precision. "Emily Roberts, you have been found guilty on all counts: wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and attempting to destroy evidence. The court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years probation." Emily's face crumpled. 8 years of her life, gone. Furthermore, Judge Hawkins continued, "You are ordered to sell your 50% ownership stake in Lux Staging to your victim at market rate. You will also pay $2.3 million in damages for the money you stole and attempted to steal." The math was brutal. Emily's stake in the company was worth $6 million, but after damages, legal fees, and criminal defense costs, she'd walk away with maybe $400,000 if she was lucky. Derek received 4 years for conspiracy and aiding wire fraud. His cooperation had helped, but not enough to avoid prison time. "Your professional licenses are hereby revoked," the judge told Emily. "You are permanently banned from working in finance, real estate, or any position requiring fiduciary responsibility in the state of Illinois." Emily's life was over. No career, no money, no freedom, and no Derek. The civil restitution hearing was even more satisfying. Emily was forced to sign over her company shares, her downtown condo, and her luxury car to cover the damages she owed me. "The defendant will also pay plaintiff's legal fees," the civil judge ruled, totaling $187,000. I walked out of that courthouse as the sole owner of what was now Meridian Staging, worth $12 million and growing. Emily walked out in handcuffs, heading to federal prison. The Chicago Business Journal ran the story with the headline, "Trust Fund Princess Gets 8 Years for Stealing Business Partner's Company." Emily's wealthy family publicly disowned her to protect their reputation. Her Northwestern alumni directory removed her name entirely. She'd lost everything: money, freedom, career, family, and reputation. Perfect justice. As Emily was led away in handcuffs, I approached her one final time. "I trusted you with everything," I said quietly. "You chose to steal it. Now you have nothing." Emily looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Claire, I'm sorry. I never meant." "Yes, you did," I interrupted. "You meant every bit of it." Derek, watching from across the hallway, turned and literally ran toward the exit when he realized Emily had no money left to support his appeals. Even her boyfriend abandoned her in the end. Walking out of that federal courthouse, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: complete peace. For the first time since that horrific Monday morning discovery, I could breathe without my chest tightening. Emily was in handcuffs, Derek was facing prison, and justice had been served with mathematical precision. The emotional journey from betrayal to empowerment had been brutal. I'd gone from trusting best friend to strategic warrior in just 7 days. The naive Claire who'd built a company based on friendship and trust was gone, replaced by someone who understood that business required both compassion and steel. Rebranding Lux Staging to Meridian Staging felt like shedding poison skin. I kept our talented employees, our gorgeous office space, and our reputation for excellence. But I eliminated every trace of Emily's toxic influence. As sole owner of a $12 million company, I finally had the clarity to see what we could become without Emily's resentment and sabotage holding us back. She'd spent years convincing me I was just the creative one, but I'd just outmaneuvered 2 career criminals using pure strategy. The woman who'd once signed documents without reading them had become someone who could execute a perfect legal takedown while staying completely within the law. I'd found strength I never knew I possessed. Within 12 months, Meridian Staging was worth $18 million, 50% more than Lux Staging at its peak. Turns out, removing toxic leadership and criminal co-conspirators was excellent for business growth. The personal victory that meant the most came on a crisp October afternoon. Marcus proposed in the penthouse we'd staged for the Patterson family, the same contract Emily had tried to use to manipulate me into signing away my company. 6 months later, we had our wedding reception in a venue perfectly staged by Meridian Staging. The irony was beautiful. The company Emily tried to steal was now creating the happiest day of my life. A year later, the contrast between our lives was stark and satisfying. I owned a $4.2 million mansion in Lincoln Park, complete with a home office where I ran my $18 million business empire. Emily lived in a 400-square-foot studio apartment above a laundromat, working as a night shift telemarketer, one of the few jobs available to convicted felons. Derek filed for bankruptcy and moved back in with his parents in Ohio. His gambling addiction had cost him everything, including his freedom. The most important lesson wasn't about business strategy or legal maneuvering. It was about human nature. I'd spent 6 years seeing Emily as my best friend, ignoring red flags because I wanted to believe in loyalty and partnership. I learned that loyalty is earned through actions, not assumed through history. When someone shows you who they really are through their choices, their priorities, their willingness to betray trust for money, believe them the first time. Trust isn't naive when it's backed by verification. Kindness isn't weakness when it's paired with strength. And sometimes, the people closest to you are the ones planning to destroy you. But if you stay smart, stay legal, and stay 2 steps ahead, justice will always find a way to win.